Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another video for Eve Echoes using one of the worst screenshots I've ever taken, but hey, there is a purpose to this, as we'll see later. Today it is time for another developer Q&A. Now normally I try to put these out on a Thursday or Friday when they launch, but there's been so much exciting new content over the past couple of days, I've kind of prioritised that first and foremost. Now for those of you who don't know, every week the Eve Echoes developers take 4 questions that have been posed by the community, answer them, and then post that response on the official Eve Echoes Twitter account at Eve Echoes. Now I know that not everyone uses Twitter or wants to use Twitter, so each week I go over these 4 dev Q&As, and I read them out, I give my thoughts and opinions to help you understand what's going on in the game. If you are on Twitter, please also make sure to follow me at CPT Benzie. I'm trying to get at Captain Benzie, but there's some South African guy who's not used Twitter in like 6 years who's holding on to that one. Anyway, with all that said and done, let's jump straight into this week's developer Q&A, which is for the week of the 28th of August, 28th of July through to the 3rd of August. I can't believe we're already in August. 2021 has shot past. I don't know if this is supposed to be like this, asks our first question, but shouldn't we be able to see what weapons a ship has fitted if we observe them? It helps with recon and picking your fights. Yeah, that's the tenuous link that we had here. You'll notice that this Macariel that I've taken a screenshot of has no cannons or missiles or anything on it anywhere in sight. There are no weapon systems shown here. Now, in honesty, I was under a different expectation for this reason, but Lance.'s response is, currently, players can only see weapons fitted to their own ships. If we show all the fitted weapons of other players in real time, it'll lead to excessive pressure on both the server and the client, so we don't have any plan to do this at the time. But if we get more similar requests, we will consider adding new modules that allow players to scan others' fitted modules. Now, first of all, I genuinely thought that the reason for not showing modules was simply so that you don't have all of that intel. You go into combat kind of blind, hoping to find out what your opponent has, and then you adapt and respond to it. It's kind of a key part of PvP. You look at an enemy ship and you think to yourself, what are they likely to be fitted with, and can I take that? And this gives rise to a lot of really quite exciting fits. The ever-popular creamy Cruor, for example. People look at a Cruor and assume that it's going to be using lasers because it's got bonuses to it, right? And then it's probably going to have neutralizers and Nosferatu, so if you can outrange those, you're going to be okay. Then you engage, and you discover that actually they're using the long-range webs and missiles, and suddenly it's a completely different engagement, and you've got to adapt to that and either die or adapt and get out of there, or adapt and survive it, and win the fight. It's kind of part and parcel of EVE, and I've always assumed that that was the reason for it. I hadn't even considered that, yeah, of course, it's going to massively increase the server load. The point, though, is that I actually quite like that you can't see what your opponent is packing until they engage you. It's a key point, because it means that there's a difference between going up against someone, especially missile ships, and thinking to yourself, are they using large missiles, are they using medium missiles, are they using rapids? What have they actually fitted onto there? And you kind of have to learn to counter and deal with that. I'm all for that, in fairness, and I really am glad that you can't just see what your opponent has. That said, this concept here, a new module that will allow players to scan others' fitted modules, absolutely. Get that in the game right now, Lance. Or not right now, I know you've got other content that you're working on, but get that in the game. That is a really cool little concept there that, yeah, when you first spot another ship on your radar, on your scanners, you're not necessarily going to know exactly what it's fitted with, but you can then use a module that will scan it down. Now, EVE Online actually has a module as well that you can scan people's cargo holds, which is really useful as a pirate, because you can work out whether or not it's worth jumping someone, and you can get some ideas on that. It's kind of like a customs scan, almost. So for me, the concept of having a scanner that allows you to see what your opponent's weapon and fit is would be awesome. Now, I'm not suggesting that you just click the button and bam, it shows your opponent's fit completely. What I would like to see is a scanner, possibly with a set of scanning skills on it, that the higher your ability, the more information is revealed to you. So you kind of get bits of the fitting. How cool would that be, that you scan someone down and if you've got enough skills, you can see even what rigs they're fitted with. Whereas if you're just, a sort of casually using this function, you might just get a hint at what the weapons are. Maybe you see that, oh, they've got a web of fire, that kind of thing. You know, just a couple of modules here and there that give you an idea of what you're actually up against. To me, that would be really cool, and it allows for some fit sort of variance. You can sit there and work out whether or not you are happy to engage targets based on your information that you can kind of guess what they're fitted with, or whether you want to take up a module slot and power grid, etc., to actually scan someone down and figure out whether or not that fit is worth going up against. To me, that is awesome as a concept. I don't know, let me know what you think in the comment section below, guys. Lance, if you're watching, please, I think that would be an amazing new scanning system. Number 2 then for the questions. Currently the activation time of tracking computers and missile guidance computers is really short. Could you consider adding a skill which increases the activation time? Wilson responds, the game now has various modules that serve different functions. If we add skills for each of these modules, the skill list will look overwhelmingly messy. Besides, for some less frequently used modules, their corresponding skills will only be learned by a few. Now, honestly, I kind of disagree with Wilson here, and that's a weird thing to say, because I'm literally saying, sorry game designers, I don't agree with the vision that you have for your game. And it's just purely on the understanding here that I think actually skills that are only learned by a few players are fine. I think that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. There are some skills out there that are very specific already, things like the propulsion jamming skills, which I still think webifiers should be moved to, and rename electronic warfare as capacitor warfare, but hey, there we go, that's another topic for another video that I've already talked about before. My point is that not adding a skill because not many people will use it, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. It means that you actually specialise into certain things, and EVE Online, definitely, the skill tree there is overwhelming, and I'm glad that EVE Echo's skills are not nearly as complex. I don't want to have to train Galente Frigate and Minmatar Frigate in order to be able to pilot a Dramiel. That sticks you into certain things. But the ability to then say, right, okay, actually, I want to train a skill that is going to allow me to do this very specific thing is pretty cool, and I'm honestly all for that, because it adds a lot of build variety and gives players choice of what they're going to do. That said, I do also disagree with increasing the activation time of tracking computers and missile guidance computers. I kind of like the fact that these are notoriously short. It serves the purpose. And yes, I know, I use a Hurricane for crying out loud. I have a Hurricane with medium tracking computers on there using medium strikes, and you activate the tracking computers to either get the extra range, or in certain cases, if I want to go frigate hunting in my Brawler Cane, I will still have the tracking computers there. I can activate just to get that extra burst of tracking up close so that I can try and deal with that target. Now this kind of links into the discussion we had in the last video, in that medium turrets I think track a little bit too well as it is. Medium missiles I think apply too well as it is to smaller, faster moving targets, and I don't think that battleships necessarily need a buff directly on their own either. I think if you're using a battleship and you're using tracking computers, the fact that they have such a small short activation time is part of their internal balancing. I think that if you made that too much longer, then you're going to hit a situation where actually the module becomes a little bit too powerful. The concept, for example, using the Brawler Cane as an example, is that I have it there as kind of a panic button. I can sit there and be shooting at most things and not worrying about it. The passive bonus that that tracking computer gives me is nice. Then if something does, get a little bit too close and I'm struggling to hit it, I can, pop that off and hopefully kill it in the time that it activates. And I'm also aware that as my strike cane, I literally get one shot out of a tracking computer. That I'm okay with. I kind of wish that, yeah, it maybe was just a little bit extended to get to the 2 shots, but at the same token, I get why that's the case. It's to kind of internally balance those medium weapons and not make them ridiculously powerful. And it's the same with mediums. I've seen people doing all kinds of crazy things, like watching a Typhoon, for example, with medium torpedoes, not medium torpedoes, large torpedoes, fitted to it, with a load of the rigs that reduce the explosion radius, and missile guidance computers on there to basically go hunting medium ships and just do absolutely massive alpha damage onto them. And there's, I've seen fits like that, and it's kind of an interesting thing to do because you activate all of those, but the point is you don't want that to be something you can run near constantly. I like the fact that, say, if you have 2 or 3 gyro stabilizers, you can actually run those constantly if you have the right skills for it. You have to skill into medium and large, or medium and small, for example, in order to actually achieve that. But I quite like the fact that you can get to the point where if you've got 2 gyro stabilizers, they have at least a 30-second activation time. So you activate it, the other one's on cooldown, you then activate the next one, and by the time that one finishes, the first one's back up again. I like that you can do that, but I don't think that tracking is the kind of thing that should apply for. Again, maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you disagree with me. Let me know in the comment section down below. I just think that tracking and application is something that needs to be balanced more carefully than damage. I mean, damage is one of those things that if you, like, accidentally put it right the way up, that's not a problem if it struggles to hit other targets. If you put the tracking up, then the damage that they're already doing suddenly applies a lot better and it causes more problems, in my opinion. Question 3. Since the industrial mining ships are also getting stronger in the sense of asteroids are getting mined quicker, what are the plans about asteroids' belts, groups, and clusters? Will these be beefed up as well, in a sense? Nero responds, we're not planning on buffing asteroid belts. If mining ships become more capable of mining, the market will become more competitive, and minerals will be cheaper. Industry players may not see an actual increase in their income, but we will consider increasing the mining ability of mining ships and boost the output of individual asteroid belts after releasing bigger ships, or ones that take more minerals to produce. This is actually an interesting concept that was given to me recently, and again, beware flagging up little mini Benzie rant here. I'm trying not to do too many of these, they just kind of crop up in all these concepts. Now, I was talking to someone recently who pointed out, quite rightly, that every time we get a new mining ship added into the game, sort of, into the pool of players, every time someone hits Tech 10, for example, and gets access to the Covetor 2, they're suddenly able to mine a lot more ore than they were before, which means there's a lot more ore on the market, which reduces the cost of that ore, which means that newer miners just starting out are less profitable. But I kind of also get the fact that less profitable mining early on isn't necessarily a problem. Bear with me. The reason for that being that if you are a Tech 4 miner, you don't need as many minerals, you don't need as much ISK. It's the same as early on ratting is less profitable than Tech 10 ratting. That's kind of the concept of how this works. I do also appreciate that the more minerals there are in the market, the lower the price goes and the less viable mining becomes. But also remember, we are just about to get carriers and dreadnoughts added to the game into October, and oh boy, can I imagine those are going to require an absolute metric F-ton of minerals and ores in order to actually construct one of those completely. So it's one of those things that suddenly demand is going to shoot right the way up for those, and this is going to be something that fluctuates fairly frequently. As long as there is stuff to be building with minerals and ores, then the value of those will increase as demand increases. But as long as there's nothing to build, then the supply starts to outstrip the demand and the cost goes down. Now, the reason that this is kind of verging on a Benzie rant is because this is where sort of insurance and the whole industrial and mining has been nerfed comes into play. It's the same as scanning causing nerfs in low-sec storyline encounter runners. Basically, the reason that the scanning was so good to the game was because it stopped everyone pretty much being able to run these super difficult encounters completely safely. You could just jump in a battleship and safely do these encounters pretty much AFK. That's AFK ISK generation. That's an ISK faucet. The more ISK that is added into the game via these ISK faucets, then the lower the value of that ISK, and Plex becomes the currency that inflates and has most value. Then there are two ways to deal with inflation in a market. You can either reduce the amount of ISK coming into that market, or you can increase the ways of destroying ISK from the market. When you buy a ship, when someone builds a ship, they have to turn the oven on, and that has a innate cost into it. The game just absorbs that ISK. That is ISK that is destroyed from the market. It comes out of your wallet and just disappears. It doesn't go to someone else, it doesn't move, it doesn't relocate, it is destroyed. This is what's called an ISK sink. It's the same when you pay taxes or when you pay repair costs. These are ISK destroying sinks. They are ways to take ISK out of the community pool and destroy it from the game, so that the ISK faucets that are creating ISK and adding it to the game, again, this is things like Concord bounties, discovering an item in a crate or on a ship, on an NPC ship, for example, and then selling it. That is a way of creating money, sort of. Well, the only real ISK faucets in the game are basically bounties. Bounties and asteroid mining and module looting kind of do. They're sort of ISK faucets, but they also necessitate, and things like mining and selling loot that you find on rats it does require other players to have ISK already. It's kind of creating new content into the game, which has an ISK value, but it's not pure ISK, if that makes sense. Anyway, I'm getting way into sort of advanced economics here. The point is that the more intensive the gameplay, the more ISK should be generated. This means that if you are able to AFK storyline encounters with impunity, then they should be less rewarding, or you just make it more difficult. You stop people being able to AFK that content. It therefore reduces that ISK faucet, which stops inflation. Insurance has also done this. Now, I keep maintaining that I know many people who are still getting on well with insurance. I know a friend of mine who builds destroyers, literally made 100 million ISK profit in about an hour selling destroyers on the market to buy orders. There are ways to do it, and you can sit there and go, oh yeah, but it's only 100 million. I used to make $1 billion a day. Well, yes, that's the point. You should not be able to make $1 million a day on what is essentially AFK gameplay. And before you say, oh, actually there's a lot more to it than that in industry, look, I'm not naysaying industry. I'm not telling you that industry players are boring and what I'm saying is, let's be honest, as an industry player, you log into the game, you gather your materials, or if your materials are already there, you just kind of hit the cook button, and then you can log out and you come back in and it's done again. Ratting, on the other hand, or PvP, require you to actually be actively engaged with the game at your device. You can't log in, start ratting, and then go offline again. That doesn't work, and there's inherent risk to ratting, and those risks aren't really there in industry. They are in certain places, like reverse engineering chances and things like that. That is industrial risk, and that reduces profit. That is a design to make sure that your profit is not exceeding the amount of ISK faucets. Your ISK faucet of profit is not exceeding the ISK sinks that exist in the game, so it's not causing massive inflation. If every industrialist was able to make $1 billion ISK a day, no one would bother ratting, and immediately that then destroys the ability for industrialists to actually sell their products. Sorry. So the concept is that you need industrialists to be nerfed in order for them to actually make money. I know that sounds ridiculous, but if industry was too profitable, then everyone's going to do industry, and suddenly industry becomes not at all profitable because there's nothing to do. If no one's actually going out and trying risky ratting and PvP, no one's losing ships, and if no one's losing ships, no one's buying ships, and if no one's buying ships, then no one needs to make ships. That's the point I'm getting at here. It's really circular. Maybe one day I'll sit down and do a ranty video about how these in-game economics actually work, but there are plenty of videos already out on YouTube that talk about exactly how this works. And the bottom line is, and this is where this becomes controversial, and I mean no offense to anyone, but 90% of the folks who are complaining that, oh, scanning has ruined the game, I don't make as much money as I used to, or insurance has ruined the game, I don't make as much money as I used to, or new ships and adding to mining has ruined the game, I don't make as much money as I used to, are essentially complaining that the game is not as ridiculously easy and lucrative for them anymore. And I know that's a controversial thing, but that is literally the point. The point is that you're not supposed to be making $1 billion ISK a day mining. You're not supposed to be making $1 billion ISK a day AFK industrialing. You're not supposed to be able to make $1 billion ISK a day AFK sitting in bad hair day. Anyway, I'm rambling on this entirely too much. What they're saying here is that they don't intend to buff the asteroid belts yet. What they're going to try and do first is increase the ways to destroy ore by building ships, which should help industrialists out. And my goodness, that's a long rant for one question. Anyway, hello, I was thinking if there are plans for more ships with expert level skills associated with them. This is a question I've actually wanted to ask a lot, because, as far as I'm aware, the stealth bombers are literally the only ships in the entirety of EVE Echoes that benefit from expert level skills directly. They require, and their skill bonuses have expert frigate command. There's no ship out there that has expert cruiser command or expert destroyer command or things like this. There's no ship out there that uses expert small missile operation, for example. Advanced is where these all stop. And it does kind of beg the question of, what's the point in experts? Anyway, We have no immediate plan to add new ships, as the current ship tree already has various ship types, says Wilson, and I'm hoping they're not being completely honest about this, because where's that Tristan? Where's the Rifter? We need more frigates and destroyers at tech level 10. We also need a tech level 10 railgun cruiser. They just don't exist right now, and that is problematic. Anyway, but in the future, when we release brand new content, we will add more powerful ships. These ships will have special buffs that are required if players learn corresponding expert level skills, which is good. Which is good. As it stands, I would also actually like to see that the faction ships get buffed, but do so in a way that changes their skills to expert. So, to bear with me here, instead of the Dramiel, for example, getting, say, I can't actually remember off the top of my head, but say it's a 5% increase to small cannon damage for each level of advanced small cannon operation. Make that 7% increase, but at expert cannon operation. Instead of it getting a flight velocity increase or whatever for every level of advanced frigate command, give it additional, but for expert frigate command. Make it so that the Ashimu, rather than using advanced cruiser command and advanced electronic warfare, uses expert cruiser command and expert electronic warfare, but increases those buffs slightly. So rather than a 5% increase to range, give it a 7% increase to range. Rather than a 10% increase to damage, give it a 12% increase to damage. That kind of thing. Buff those faction ships like that by demanding that you have to train into the expert level skills in order to do so. Because one of the things that I've seen a lot of people say is that, you know, the whole point of a faction frigate, for example, is that it's a top-tier frigate that can be used really early on in the game. There's no tech level requirement for it. If you want a tech level 10 Stabber 2 Interceptor, for example, a Stabber 2 Interceptor, yeah. Not Stabber 2 Interceptor, sorry, Slasher 2 Interceptor. My brain fell out my head there. Yeah, okay, of course that's going to be better than a Dramiel because it's Tech 10 and you have to have been playing the game for a year before you can do that. I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, I would argue that if you made it so that the Dramiel used expert level skills and the Dramiel was still bigger than this, was still more powerful than the Slasher 2 Interceptor, it means that early on you have to really specify. If you want to be a Dramiel pilot, yeah, you can access that at, say, Tech Level 6 or Tech Level 7 at that point, rather than having to wait all the way till Tech Level 10, but you also have to have massively min-maxed your skills to actually get the most out of it, because you're having to go all the way up to Expert Level 5 to maximise the stuff in the ship. And I don't even have Small Cannon Expert Level 5. Like, seriously, both my Small Cannon skills are Expert Level 4. 554 in operation, 554 in upgrade. Because there's not that much difference. It's like 35 days of training to get myself an additional % of damage. It just doesn't seem worth it. Whereas if you had the faction ships requiring that, suddenly people have to train into that final point. And I think that's a way to fix it. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Again, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. It's sad to see that they're saying there's no new ships coming. We do need those new ships. I've also kind of had a bit of a rant on Reddit this morning that I've just discovered that obviously if you want to use like an Explorer frigate, you want to go doing the new relic and data sites. If you want to go to a relic site, you need a relic analyzer. If you go to a data site, you need a data analyzer. And if you want to find either of them, you need a wide scan resonator. Now, that's 3 mid-slots, but the Explorer frigates only have 2. So yeah, okay, I get it, that, you just pick a type. You sit there and say, right, I want to do Gurustus and Serpentis, therefore I need a data, I'm going to launch that way, and I'm just going to take a data and a wide scanner. But it just kind of sucks that the ship that is designed for exploration only gets the 2 slots out of the 3 that would theoretically be required to make that as good as it can be. Whereas, obviously, the cruiser size, like the Bellicose Covert Ops, those have 3. Anyway, I've rambled enough in this video. There's a little bit of ranting going on there. I am genuinely trying to, cut down on the rants. I don't like ranting. I think what I really need to do is just put a video out where I make those rants in one time. And then when I feel the urge coming to make that rant again, like, for example, I want to talk about scanning and people complaining about it, I can just go, I'm not going to rant here. Check out the video in the description. There's my rant. And I can just do it that way, and it'll cut down on video time as well. Anyway, folks, let me know your thoughts and opinions on these questions, and if you've got a question for the developers, make sure you click the link in the description that takes you through to the Google document. You can ask the question there, and if your question is chosen to be answered, you will receive a month of Omega, which is awesome. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching this one right the way to the end. Look forward to hearing your opinions on all this in the comment section below. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!